Welcome to our community teach-in event. My name is Liz, this is Owen. We are going to be teaching you about Backyard Prairies and sustainable lawn care today, which is really important and is going to be even more important coming up in the next couple of months as you start to prepare for your gardens, your lawn care come this spring. Switch it over. We are part of a nonprofit called WAVE, which does stand for 4 of our values. W being wildlife, the A being action and advocacy, V is for vision, and then E is education. That's what we're doing right now. WAVE is a 501c3 nonprofit and is dedicated to bringing communities together through environmental stewardship. So that's what we're doing today. We're bringing our community together to learn a little bit more about sustainable lawn care. So I'm going to hand it over to Owen to introduce themselves, and then I'll introduce myself after that.
Okay, so hello, my name is Owen Murgic. I am an undergraduate student at the University of Minnesota, currently working on a Bachelor's of Science in Fisheries, Wildlife, and Conservation Biology with an emphasis in conservation biology and a minor in marine biology. It's a mouthful. What I want to do is work in environmental education as well as field sciences post-graduation. I am now an advanced open water diver. I'm going to have to update my little bio there.
Yay!
Through a protocol that I got through the School of Environmental Studies at the Minnesota Zoo that really made me fall in love with environmental conservation and education, which is what we're doing here.
Woohoo! And my name is Liz. I am one of the founders, like Owen, of the WAVE Coalition. And I have my master's degree in conservation management and marine biology, if you can believe that, for being a Minnesotan. But I have worked about 5+ years in animal care, so in zoos and aquariums. Before that, though, I did aquaculture research while I lived in Florida. But sometimes home calls you a lot harder than work. So I came back home to Minnesota, where we founded a nonprofit. So yeah.
Good us to go.
All right. So I'm gonna hand it over to Owen, and we're gonna learn some really interesting things today.
Okay, the main idea of what we're talking about is prairies and sustainable lawns due to a loss of prairie and grass biodiversity. If you're not sure what that means, that's okay. If we can look at this image, I'm not sure how well it appears
online,
we'll figure but we can figure that out. You can see this whole region that is yellow is about all of the land that used to just completely be prairie in 1860, and only these dark spots kind of in highlighted patches is what remained in 2015, and that number is most likely still dwindling as our amount of prairie is not going up. We, according to the Minnesota DNR, have less than 1% of our prairie left in Minnesota. So we need to help them. They are disappearing. It's not just a Minnesota issue. It is something that is spanning across our whole country, which is a really bad thing because prairies are so important to our ecosystems. They provide habitat to pollinators and many other insects that we might not think we love, but are responsible for many things that we need but don't really realize. A lot of our food comes from pollinators or is dependent on food that the pollinators produces. Root systems of prairies also help prevent floods and store large amounts of carbon, helping not only fight against global warming, but also just flooding in your land if you have a prairie in or near your lands. And they also filter groundwater, improving overall water quality in an area. So having prairie in your ecosystem is a really good way to not only support your local environment, but also support your water quality and support your and your neighbors' yard's health from preventing floods. How it works is by changing your land into varying degrees of prairie or prairie grass, native grasses that the species our native bugs like and are used to, allows them to get from those hot spots of what's left on our map more easily. But because of how separated that prairie ecosystem has become, it's hard for our insects or our plant pollen to spread flower diversity to get from ecosystem to ecosystem and spread across the country. If you can give a tiny little hot spot at your house, those insects then have a rest stop, like a little hotel or a gas station, before getting to their next big ecosystem. which the more people that do it, the more we can spread and the overall quality for everybody will go up. Increasing insect diversity doesn't also only increase insect diversity. The more insects you have, the better health you're going to have overall. The more birds you're going to see, the more butterflies, which are still insects, but people think they're more beautiful, or stuff like that. So as I mentioned, there is a large range of options for what you can do. You don't need to turn your whole house into a prairie. I understand some people like to have a lawn. Some people invite people over, have barbecues. That's okay. On the most amount of lawn section, you can start doing stuff like putting native grasses in just decorative pots. I will talk more about these main sections in more detail, and the simplest option is just to use native grasses in decorative pots. That way, there's nothing going on with your lawn. You can still have that exactly as you wanted, but you still are supporting that ecosystem. This is also a great thing if you don't want to have to deal with preventing it from spreading. If you do plant grasses in your lawn, that grass may naturally spread. So if you want to maintain the look to be contained, you can keep grasses in pots, or something like this, which is a more, the next step, a more sculpted out garden that is prairie grasses, prairie wildflowers, or just like a bee garden is often just like beautiful flowers that are meant to this area. Maybe not as much grasses, but still really hit hard on that pollinator level. Up next would be ground cover and native plants. So it's a little bit hard to tell, but in this picture with the two red chairs, the grass in that area is not grass, it's actually clover. So short clover, wild thyme, there are a lot of different options. There's many different plants that aren't grass that you can replace your grass with to still provide more food. So short clover and wild thyme both flower, so that entire space has now become technically a flower bed that is giving pollen to our pollinators and our insects, and you still get the same look. Those are often, however, less trample proof. So if you have high traffic going through your yard, this may not be the best choice. If you do still want to have a lot of prairie, a lot of grasses in your lawn, but you still want a lawn you can walk on, so maybe not clover thyme, you can line your fence or your house in grass to create a sort of barrier where you're sacrificing some of your space, but you still have an area that you can do whatever hosting you do with your lawn. And then, of course, at the very end of the spectrum, if you don't use your lawn very much, and you love the look of a prairie, you can convert your entire yard into prairie. It does take a little bit of upkeep as you begin getting those grasses to establish, but a huge benefit of having a prairie is that once it's established, it should be self-regulating. Minnesota's native grasses have much deeper roots than the grass we typically plant in our houses. Kentucky bluegrass, as you may know if you've ever seen sod, has roots that are about half an inch thick, and that's why you can roll it up into carpets. Our native grasses have roots that dig 1 feet deep into the soil, so they can get all that water from deep in the soil, makes them more drought resistant, and that's also what's holding that soil together, being better at erosion prevention than our traditional grasses are. So, as I mentioned, a little bit more detail about each of these ones. Decorative pots and or small gardens. This is going to create a wonderful pit stop for our insects and our biodiverse life. Your house may not become an amazing pollinator paradise like a prairie may be, but you're still helping the cause, and that is what matters. You are giving them an area to stop, recharge, get a little power before they can get somewhere else they can move on. If everybody did this in their house, there'd be no issue. They could jump from house to house to house and get to where they needed. I do not want to discredit this as an option, considering it being the least grass. This is still a wonderful choice and helpful choice. It is less visually intensive. Your whole house isn't a prairie. It still looks practically the same. You're just increasing some decorations in pots. And I will say, some of these decorative grasses can look really fun. It's not just green sticking straight up like your turf grass. They come in different colors, they come in different shapes. You can get really creative with what grasses you're planting. Some that add unique values that I'd recommend that are native to Minnesota would be big blue stem, purple lovegrass, or northern sea oats. There's a lot more. You can Google them, find resources. We could probably provide some as well. If
we have resources.
We have resources. Look at us go.
Woohoo!
And as I mentioned as well, the pots may help decrease spreading of grass into your maintained lawn if that is something that you are very protective of. The next thing, as I mentioned, ground covers. So this is replacing that traditional turf grass and replacing it with a native species of grass or a knot grass. Big blue stem, there it is again. It works as decoration. It also works as a mowed and maintained lawn. It still is going to have that longer root system, so it's still doing the drought resistance, erosion resistance, but it still kind of just looks like a lawn. Same with prairie drop seed. If you want to get into stuff that's not a grass at all, purple prairie clover or foxtail prairie clover are great. You could even have woodland strawberry. You could have a lawn made of strawberries. Come May, you can pick wild strawberry.
That's cool.
You can get all sorts of creative with your lawn. You don't just need a big green space. You can have big green space with strawberries. And this creates a habitat that still benefits our native species while still looking like a lawn. There may be some fear if you live in a neighborhood and everybody has a maintained lawn. You might not want to be the prairie in the middle of the maintained lawns. I get it. So this kind of is a more strong approach where you're still replacing your whole lawn. You're just going incognito mode. And as I had mentioned, native plants are still usually much more drought resistant than turf grasses. So you won't need to water your lawn. You won't need to run your sprinklers as often. You can actually save money by doing this.
Ooh.
And then of course, there is the final option of converting your entire house or your entire lawn or portions of it into a prairie. So as I mentioned, there's a spectrum of options you can do. There's also a spectrum of how much of your lawn you can turn into a prairie. You can do just your backyard, just your front yard, the borders of your house. Maybe you don't use your lawn at all and you just don't want to worry about it. You say, I don't want to maintain my lawn. I'm going to plant a lot of native grasses and my lawn is going to sit there. And this works. It's a wonderful way to give to the environment. Maybe even you have a large lawn and you just have a section of it that's further away from the house. It is usually a larger cost up front of tearing up your turf and planting in prairie seeds, establishing the prairie, and then once it's set up, you shouldn't need to water it unless we're going through like a severe drought for Minnesota, because these species are all built to survive in the natural conditions of Minnesota. And that's really the biggest thing, is not fighting the land that you're living on. You are planting the species that are supposed to be there, and they are less of a work to maintain because it's just how they're supposed to be. And this is really going to be where you're seeing the highest amounts of biodiversity in your lawn. You'll start seeing butterflies, crickets, probably ticks. Not everything's as fun, but they are still unfortunately helpful to our ecosystems.
I know it's really hard to see on the screen, but I'll go over all of them. The first one is blueprairie.com. It is a Minnesota-based wildflower hub. So if you want to do one of these options, but you don't know where to buy all of these native plants, because you're not just gonna go pick them in a native park. Like, we need to, that's actually illegal in some places. Don't do that. So Blue Prairie is a great option. They have organic methods to grow native plants. They have native plants. They have all those beautiful grasses that Owen was discussing about, all of the native wildflowers, and they have an actual facility and they can teach you more about it. Then you have Sassy Daffodil. Shout out to my girl. Sorry, I know Sassy Daffodil. I know the owner. She's wonderful, and she will walk you through. She's actually a consultant, so her job is to help you with these options and find better solutions for your lawn, but also just your garden. So even if you have a vegetable garden, maybe you don't have a garden that's like this one, maybe you have non-native plants and you're not sure why one plant is growing better than another, or you're concerned about one, what we would consider a pest to that flower. Maybe you're concerned about it. She can assist you. She can also help you plan your yard as well. So she does know about this as something we're doing tonight, and she did say that this is something that she can help and assist people with in just as a consulting and a coaching way. She comes in and walks through your yard. So she also gives you, which was really important, non-toxic fertilizers, which leads me to the next group, which is, these are all Minnesota based, by the way. Organic Lawns by Lawncare. Hopefully I pronounced that correctly. Sorry, you guys, I didn't talk to you in person, so I didn't know how to pronounce it, so I'm doing my best here. Lawncare. They're a family company. They help you with lawn care. If you're like really concerned with the upkeep of your normal lawn, so just the normal, what you put, Kentucky bluegrass, they can come in and give you non-toxic fertilizers, and they can actually help you with your lawn, because they also have a lot of resources on their website. My favorite one, which is really important, especially us with WAVE, we're very, very much into animal care, appropriate animal welfare. They have a lot of information about what fertilizers can actually do to your pets. If you have dogs going outside eating grass, I take my cats outside, they tend to eat grass too. Like, that's really bad for them to be eating those toxic chemicals. One is MNL Corp. All of these will be on our website as well, but they will actually build it for you. So like Owen was mentioning, there's a large cost up front and a large project up front to turn your entire lawn into a full prairie. They can do that for you. It's gonna cost a little more, but they can do it so you don't have to worry about it. They also do a lot of restoration projects with a lot of companies too. So they work from individual families all the way up to big corporations. And they do have some information about solar solutions. They also sell native seeds, sell plants. They also sell these starter kits, which are really cool, to help you with this backyard prairie. So really, really interesting stuff there. So all of these, again, will be on our website if you are interested. And with that being said, we'll move on to the next one, which I believe is Q&A.
I was going to mention it earlier, but I forgot. Kentucky bluegrass, not from Kentucky.
What?
That's from Europe.
Oh, of course it is.
It is an invasive species, not from a different portion of the United States, but actually from an entire different continent. As is the practices of maintaining a lawn. It was a European beauty standard when lawns were meant to be really expensive to have, and it was meant to highlight that you could afford to have a lawn. And that was the beauty standard right about as America was being discovered. And so that is kind of what swept the lands here and just stayed. And that's typically why it's considered the norm here now. So we actually got rid of all the environment to just replace it with
fancy lawns.
Fancy grass or boring grass. We got rid of the fancy grass for the boring grass.
We were discussing this earlier, and one thing that came up, you mentioned time. And I know when we were planning this, we were going through all of the information and researching and making sure all of our facts are correct. You were telling me about time lawns, like having time.
Yeah.
And it's gorgeous, you guys. It's a pink lawn. I want a pink lawn now. Did I put a picture?
I thought I did, but I didn't.
That's okay.
I thought about it.
I do have a couple questions that we got from the audience, And so I wrote them down
Okay.
so that way we have. The first one is, how can non-native plants negatively impact our lawns and the environment here in Minnesota?
Depends on which non-native plants we're talking about. So
Fair.
on a broad scale, the biggest non-native plant I'm talking about currently is Kentucky bluegrass. It
Right.
is replacing a large amount of space with it's just one plant, rather than being something that used to probably house 15 different grasses, 20 different wildflowers, and a bunch of different insects. So you've completely killed out all diversity of wildlife to replace with just one species that is dominating the area. As I had mentioned, that species also sucks at erosion control. So our natural ecosystems are more prone to now getting disrupted by that. Other invasive species then also just continue to take out the nutrients and compete with our natural species for all of those resources. There's only so much nutrients in the soil. I don't want to give you like a soil lesson, but there's only so much food in the soil, and these non-native species are often or can be much more aggressive or have tactics that our native species aren't used to dealing with, and so they're able to take out everything else and dominate, like we're seeing with monoculture Kentucky bluegrass lawns. I will contradict myself a little bit and confess short clover is not native to
And that's the one I was excited about.
Minnesota. You're excited about thyme.
I was excited about thyme, but the clover lawns are really trendy.
But
a lot of people are doing clover lawns.
Because they're legumes, they recycle nutrients into the soil. Clover is considered a naturalized species. So it's not native to the environment, but it isn't detrimental to the environment's health. It's beneficial as a legume. It's doing an ecosystem service that nobody here is doing, and so it's not out competing anybody.
Interesting.
So there is still some contradiction where it's like, I'm all for a clover lawn. It's not a native species, but it still helps.
Okay, next question. What should I do if I have an HOA or if there is any neighborhood restrictions to my lawn?
Okay, so I'm gonna go back to this picture of it.
Yeah, I'll move. Might be kind of hard to see, but Owen will point it out.
If you have an HOA, this is the range of options slide that I had discussed as well. If you can recall all the words I said, I'll try and say the important ones again here. Anyways, if you have an HOA that's not letting you do something that's over all the way down here, like you have a full prairie in your lawn, you can still do, it's of course where it depends on the regulations of the HOA. Stuff leaning like this, like I said, is still very much an option. Plants in pots or small gardens that still fit traditional standards. You could maybe get away with ground cover. That's something different as long as it adheres to that sort of traditional look they're going for.
Yeah.
I think that's the best. It's just, that's another reason why it's so important to have such a range of options, is because everybody has different circumstances, everyone's living under different rules, everyone has different preferences. So you really want to be able to know all of the different options that you have.
Yeah, I would probably suggest the pots, honestly. It's like the easiest. You can just keep that right on your deck, and most places they are okay with flowers. So, last question. If you had a lawn, which option are you picking?
I want to say a whole prairie, because what I would most likely do is have a very small section, probably like a mowed down native grass or a unique ground cover, where I can still have I like to have a bonfire, have my friends over, enjoy, go sit outside, and then if I would probably, like a deck, but for grass. And then the rest I would probably make prairie, because I don't need to run around out there, and I'm gonna have a lot more fun sitting in my backyard if there's deer and beautiful butterflies out there.
100%. And we just did in our garden this past year, last summer, we had the most amount of monarch butterflies that I've seen in a very long time come to visit in like late September, October even, when it was getting cold outside. I was like, guys, get going.
Get out of here.
You gotta go.
Get to one of your trees.
Yeah. And we had just started adding native flower species, and it worked really well and it works really quick. But we have the prairie bed in our yard, and I would probably do a thyme garden, but I probably wouldn't do like the whole lawn.
Yeah.
But I would want like some mixtures of like a prairie garden, and then having like a little spot where maybe like the front yard be thyme, the backyard
Yeah,
not.
that's another thing. If you do want to make a all-around grass cover or all-around turf cover more walking resistant, you can mix in turf grasses where it's like maybe 50% clover, 50% short grass or Kentucky bluegrass even.
Interesting.
That way, just because again, in that some is better than none mentality. I just wanted to throw that back out there.
Yeah. Thank you for mentioning that.
Because you could do 50% thyme, 50%.
50%, 50%, yeah. And that way I still get my pink lawn. So cute. Anyways, well, thank you so much, Owen, for teaching us all this awesome information. We are going to have this recording on YouTube. We'll have this presentation. I'll put this on our website as well. So all this information is still going to be available. We'll be doing more community teach-ins. We were just making a list of them earlier. Recycling, very fun. Yeah, lots of maybe some water quality, maybe some invasive species discussions. So everything that can help you guys understand a little bit more about nature and make decisions that help the environment. So with that being said, thank you for joining us. And
thank you guys for listening to me talk for
extended
periods of time.
I'll always listen to you talk, Owen. Always.
Happens to the best of us.